With the NHL draft coming up, we look back at a recent draft class for the LA Kings that has turned out to be a bit unique. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show wrapping up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. We are counting down to the NHL draft in Los Angeles, 16 days away as we are recording this show. And we've been looking back at some of the LA Kings recent drafts. We do this every year around this time. And with, the passing of another year, obviously, whether those draft classes were successful or not becomes more and more clear. We've talked about the 2020 draft with Quinton Byfield. We've talked about the 2021 draft with Brandt Clarke. And today we're going to discuss the 2022 draft for the LA Kings. Now, before we get into that, if you've watched or listened to any of the shows I've done back when we've recapped some of the draft classes, you know I have this 5-year window that I usually think is fair to determine if a draft class and the players in that draft class are hits or misses. A hit being a player who is an NHL player, a miss being someone who isn't. Obviously, the odds of hitting are higher based on a number of things, but more often than not, you should probably hit on most of your first or second round picks. After that, anything's kind of gravy. Now, if you look at the Kings roster from last season, 9 players on the Kings roster were former first round picks, either by LA or another team. Byfield, Clarke, Danault, Doughty, Fiala, Kempe, Kopitar, Lewis, and Turcotte, all former first-round picks. There were 3 former second-round picks on the Kings roster, Edmondson, Hellenius, and Thomas. So 48% of the Kings roster is made up of first- and second-round draft picks. Now, that said, the Kings have done a pretty good job of acquiring or drafting players in the third round and beyond. Warren Fogle and Alex Laferriere are both third-round picks. Mikey Anderson, a fourth-rounder. Same for Jordan Spence and Jacob Morar. No fifth-round picks on the Kings roster, but Vladislav Gavrikov and Darcy Kemper were both sixth-round picks. How about that? 2 candidates for team MVP from a year ago for the LA Kings, sixth-round picks. Kyle Burroughs and Andre Lee, both 7th-round picks who saw some time with the Kings last season. And there were even 4 undrafted players on the LA Kings roster: Trevor Moore, Tanner Jeannot, Andrei Kuzmenko, and David Rittich. So back to the 2022 draft, which was held in Montreal. The Canadiens had the number 1 overall pick. They went with forward Juraj Slafkovský from Slovakia, who's turned into a decent enough NHL player, but you certainly wouldn't expect to mention his name amongst the best of the game. Maybe at some point, unlikely. He's become a solid NHL player, but when you talk about number 1 overall pick, you're typically looking for a guy to be a big difference maker. And at this point, he hasn't looked like he's going to be that, but we'll see. Slafkovský has played the most NHL games of anyone from that 2022 draft class at 200 games. The leading goal scorer from that draft class is Utah's Logan Cooley with 45. Slafkovský leads in points with 111. And if you were redrafting the 2022 NHL draft, the first overall pick would probably be someone who wasn't even picked in the first round. That would be Canadiens defenseman Lane Hudson, who was just named the Calder Trophy winner as NHL Rookie of the Year. He was a second-round pick, 62nd overall, which shows you once again how unpredictable the NHL draft can sometimes be. As for the LA Kings, they had 7 picks in the 2022 draft. They did not have a first-round pick. That was traded away to the Minnesota Wild, along with defenseman Brock Faber and the Kevin Fiala deal. That pick, 19th overall, was used by Minnesota to pick Swedish left winger Liam Öhgren. To date, Öhgren has played 28 NHL games, including 24 last season. He's got a total of 3 goals and 7 points. He had 19 goals and 37 points in the AHL last season. I reached out to Locked On Wild host Seth Topol. He said the Wild are keeping their fingers crossed that Öhgren maybe cracks the NHL roster full-time this season. All right, so of the Kings' 7 picks in 2022, They had one second round pick. Their first pick of the draft was the 51st overall selection. No third round pick. That was traded to the Nashville Predators in the Victor Arvidsson deal. They had two fourth round picks, one fifth round pick, two sixth round picks, and a seventh round pick. So a lot of picks later on in the draft. So with that first pick in the second round, the Kings selected college forward Jack Hughes. With the two fourth round picks, they went with forward Kenny Cotters out of the USHL and defenseman Angus Booth out of junior hockey. The fifth round pick was defenseman Otto Salin from Finland. With the two sixth round picks, they went with forward Jared Wright out of the U.S. Hockey League, and then selected with their second pick in the sixth round, defenseman Jack Sparks, who was playing junior hockey. The seventh and final pick was forward Caleb Lawrence, who was out of junior hockey as well. So what did the experts say about the Kings 2022 draft class at the time? Corey Pronman of The Athletic gave the Kings a B- grade, saying, quote, Los Angeles traded away their first, so not picking until 51 and then not again until 103, hurt this class. I still think, all things considered, they got some pieces to help their system. Jack Hughes is the most likely player here to play, and I think he will. And in the later rounds, there are a couple players I can buy having legit chances to make it. That was Corey Pronman from The Athletic. And I assume what he's saying by making it is being, at some point, NHL players. Chris Peters of Flow Hockey also gave the Kings draft class a B-, saying at the time, quote, I thought the Kings made the most of what they had. Los Angeles ending up with three top 100 players, including Jack Hughes, Kenny Connors, and Otto Salin. Connors was one of my favorite sleepers all season and should be a guy to watch to make it in a few years down the road. One of the real wild cards in this class is Jack Sparks, who's a towering 6'8" and showed some real pro upside in the OJHL this season. With no first rounder, Los Angeles got some good value in the mid rounds, as they so often seem to. And that was Chris Peters of Flow Hockey. And one final one, David St. Louis, I don't know, and Mitch Brown of EP Ringside gave the Kings 2022 draft class a C-, saying, quote, as longtime fans of Los Angeles' work at the draft table, we couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed in this draft class. Jack Hughes is a defensive sound center with a projectable off-puck game and enough skill to see an eventual third-line role. The other Kings picks we ranked was Otto Salin, a skilled blue liner with flashes of NHL skill. As for the rest, Angus Booth has flashes of upside. Jack Sparks is tall and shockingly fluid, and Caleb Lawrence's intelligence and skill, but only has played 2 games in the last 2 seasons. Jared Wright is fast, and the playmaking improved throughout the season. He's one to watch going forward. Again, that was David St. Louis and Mitch Brown from EP Rinkside. All right, so how have things turned out to this point for those 7 players the Kings drafted in 2022? Some interesting results to get into next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel fuller longer. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether you're snacking at your desk or on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is a snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, we are looking into how the LA Kings 2022 draft class has turned out so far. And we're doing a little bit of a deeper dive into this class because I think it has a lot of interesting things working for it. But let's look at some more general stats real quick involving the NHL draft and where players are selected. A minutes-long Google investigation revealed roughly 74% of first-round picks become NHL players. Second rounders around 34%. Third rounders, 12%, and the odds obviously go down the later a player is drafted. I saw another article that said first round picks make up about 37.3% of the NHL, second rounders, 17.2%, third rounders, 13.7%, fourth round picks, 10.9%, fifth round picks, 7.5%, sixth round picks, 7.9%, and 7th-round picks, 5.5% of the NHL. So let's get into where the Kings picks in 2022 are. And as far as the percentages go, who has the best chance of turning into NHL players? Obviously, the best chances going into it was the 2nd-round pick, and that was forward Jack Hughes. Now, here's what Corey Pronman of The Athletic had to say about Jack Hughes at the time he was drafted. Quote, Hughes is one of the more skilled and creative players in the draft. He has high-end puck skills and the ability to improvise with the puck to create chances for himself and his teammates. He's able to score goals, but he's a pass-first type of player. Hughes lacks ideal speed for the NHL, and the pace of higher levels will be his main test. He competes well enough. He won't run guys over, but he's responsible off the puck, and he doesn't shy away from physical play. Hughes projects as a bottom 6 forward, end quote. Again, that was Corey Pronman of The Athletic talking about the Kings' 2nd-round pick, their first player selected in 2022, Jack Hughes. Well, after the Kings took Jack Hughes with that 2nd pick, he went on to have 3 relatively solid seasons in college. He was playing at a great program for his final 2 years in college at Boston University, but didn't show enough for the LA Kings to sign him to an entry-level contract, which is pretty rare for a team to not do that, not only with just a 2nd-round pick, but with their first player selected in any draft class. But the Kings did not offer Jack Hughes a contract. Now, the Kings have had 13 2nd-round picks over the last 10 years, and Hughes is the only one that did not end up getting an entry-level deal. Last time the Kings had a 2nd-round pick that wasn't signed to an entry-level contract was someone named Roland McKeown, McKeown. He was the 50th overall pick in 2014, and the Kings ended up not offering him a deal. So clearly, Jack Hughes is a pretty big swing and a miss by the LA Kings. But to be fair, the Kings' rest of their draft class actually, in the end, kind of ended up hurting Hughes when it was all said and done, because the Kings only have a limited number of contracts to offer players, and they felt that some of the other guys they took later had more upside than Jack Hughes. If that wasn't the case, they probably would have taken a shot with Hughes to see what he could do, maybe in the AHL, maybe he's a late bloomer, maybe he eventually develops, but we'll never know, not at least with the LA Kings. Now, Kenny Connors was the first of the Kings' 2 4th-round picks. Remember, the Kings didn't have a 3rd-round pick. His stats last season at UMass don't jump off the page at you, but he did set a school record for scoring in 6 straight games. He had 10 goals and 29 points. Those were career highs. 6'1", 190-pound left shot forward, also tied for the team lead with 4 game-winning goals in 40 games. The Kings saw enough of him to sign Kenny Connors to a 2-year entry-level deal this past April. He's now leaving college, and he's turning pro. He will be with the Ontario Reign next season. Corey Pronman of The Athletic said at the time that Connor was selected, quote, Connors is a good-sized center who skates well and is responsible defensively. He has some offensive touch, but his overall skill level doesn't really dazzle and will be the main hurdle as a pro, end quote. Kenny Connors definitely will be a player to watch next season with the Ontario Reign to see how he does in his first professional season. The Kings' 2nd player in the 3rd round was Angus Booth. The following year, Booth became the first player that the LA Kings signed from the 2022 draft. He played 4 years in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, 6'1", 190-pound left shot defenseman. He agreed on a 3-year entry-level contract, and this past season, he played his first year of pro hockey with the Ontario Reign. He appeared in 50 games. He had 11 assists and 13 points. Corey Pronman said about Booth at the time he was drafted, quote, Booth is a middle defenseman with some skill who was an important 2-way defenseman for Shawinigan. He has some talent, but I wouldn't say his offensive touch pops. And while he defends well in junior, the question will be whether he can be a standout at either end of the rink to carve out an NHL role, end quote. Well, former Reign head coach Marco Sturm said about the rookie season for Angus Booth, quote, he was excellent. I think the injury threw him off a little bit, but overall, what a great season he had. I think he can easily make the jump to the NHL because he's that good. If you would have told me a year ago, I probably would have said not as fast, but he proved everyone wrong, end quote. So pretty high praise on Angus Booth from the now head coach of the Boston Bruins, Marco Sturm. So Angus Booth already has 1 season of pro hockey under his belt, and we will see how he does next season with the Ontario Reign, but sounds pretty good. as far as his chances of maybe making it to the NHL one day down the road. We've got 4 more picks to talk about, and we will tell you how they have looked since they've been drafted. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. We are looking back at the LA Kings 2022 draft class. The Kings' 5th round pick, 148th overall, was defenseman Otto Selin from Finland. After he played 4 years of pro hockey in his native Finland, Selin was signed to a 3-year entry-level contract by the Kings this past March. He joined the Ontario Reign for the final 3 games of the AHL season, recording an assist, and he will get a full-time look this coming season. 5'11", 190-pound right shot defenseman, had 8 goals and 28 points last season, playing for Turku in Finland. At the time he was drafted, Corey Pronman of Athletics said about him, quote, Selin is a skilled puck-moving defenseman. He shows great creativity as a handler to create off the rush and off the offensive blue line. He shows good poise to hold pucks for an extra second to make a play, and in general, he can help a power play. Selin's main issues comes on the defensive side of the puck. He's fine in that regard as a junior, but with average mobility, 5'11" frame, and a lack of physicality, whether he'll be able to check NHL players is a whole other issue. His offense gives him a chance to play if he can round out his game, end quote. Now, again, that was Corey Pronman of The Athletic on Otto Selin when he was drafted back in 2022. And like Kenny Connors, Otto Selin, another player that will be on the Ontario Reign next season, and we'll be looking forward to see what he can do in his first full season of professional hockey in North America. The Kings had 2 6th-round picks. The first was forward Jared Wright. After he was drafted, he played 3 seasons at college powerhouse Denver University, won a national title in his second year in the program. In April, the Kings signed the 6'3", 175-pound Wright to a 2-year entry-level contract. Corey Pronman said about Wright when he was drafted, quote, a decent two-way forward who was a re-entry prospect this year. He skates well, but the offensive upside is a legit question, end quote. So Jared Wright, many years playing strong college hockey at Denver University, and we will see how he does next year with the Ontario Reign as well. A lot of these guys will be playing for the Reign next season, and it'll be a lot of fun to watch how they get to develop as the Reign kind of appear to me transitioning a little bit. Not only will they have a new head coach, but it seems like, they had a lot of veteran guys on the team last year, and I think they're probably looking for a lot of the younger guys to take a bigger role next season, maybe at the expense of their success during the regular season. But again, part of being an AHL affiliate is developing players for the NHL, and I think that's going to be a big focus for the Ontario Reign next season. Not that it isn't always a focus, but it's a balance in the AHL. You want to have a competitive team. You're selling tickets. You want to put an entertaining product on the ice. I mean, it's easy to say, we're just going to develop guys, and whatever the record is, the record is. Hopefully it's good. But, there is a balance there between having players who can give you the best chance to win while also developing players as well. All right, the Kings had a second selection in the 6th round, and they took defenseman Jack Sparks. Now, he would end up not playing major junior hockey. Instead, he saw time in the USHL, also the BCHL, the British Columbia Hockey League. He eventually landed at Clarkson University for just 1 season, and the Kings decided not to sign the 6'8", 245-pound right shot defenseman to an entry-level contract. He was definitely a project pick. The Kings took a flyer on him because of his size. Again, 6'8", didn't work out. And so, again, when you have a later pick like that and you're the LA Kings, you can take a chance on somebody hoping that he will develop and turn into, kind of a diamond in the rough. So it didn't work out with Jack Sparks, but the Kings also took a bit of a flyer on a project type player with their 7th pick. And that has, to this point, kind of worked out. The 7th round selection for the Kings, the 215th out of 225 players picked in the entire NHL draft in 2022, was forward Caleb Lawrence. Now, he spent 2 seasons in the Ontario Hockey League before signing a 3-year entry-level deal last season. And it is not necessarily all that common for 7th and 6th round picks to sign entry-level contracts, but the Kings both one of their 6th-round picks and their 7th-round pick in 2022 ended up doing that. As for Caleb Lawrence, he's 6'6", 200 pounds, so another guy with a lot of big size and strength. Left winger. He split last season between the Ontario Reign and the Greenville Swamp Rabbits of the ECHL, which is an affiliate of the LA Kings. He had 13 goals and 24 points. And when the Kings drafted him, Caleb Lawrence, he was, again, a project player, mostly because of his size, but the Kings saw enough of his development 2 years later to sign him to continue to develop for 2 more years as a pro. And he's another player that I would expect to see more time with the Ontario Reign next year. One interesting note that I noticed as I was doing the research for this, the LA Kings have done outrageously well with 7th-round picks. They've had a number of them that were eventually signed to entry-level contracts, which is pretty amazing. Several of them have played in the NHL, which is astounding. And you've got guys like Nick Dowd, Dominic Kubalik, Jake Middleton, Matt Roy, Andre Lee, also Atu Yemsen, and now Caleb Lawrence, all 7th-round picks over the last 17 years that have signed entry-level contracts. 5 of those players have played in the NHL, and 4 of them have played at least 300 NHL games as former 7th-round picks. So those guys, Matt Roy, Jake Middleton, Dominic Kubalik, those guys definitely defying the odds as being 7th-round picks that not only made it to the NHL, but had a decent run in the NHL. Now, NHL teams are limited to 50 contracts in their organization, and the Kings have used 5 of those contracts on 5 of the 7 picks from the 2022 NHL draft. So yes, while Jack Hughes was a pretty big swing and a miss with their first pick, and that certainly can stand out, the rest of the class has been pretty solid, especially considering where they were drafted. So again, for next season, Kenny Connors, Angus Booth, Otto Saline, Jared Wright, Caleb Lawrence, all guys expected to be with the Ontario Reign, all later round picks that are keeping the dream alive of being eventually LA Kings one day. And if they do, then they'll be like guys like a Matt Roy, who have defied the odds to be later round picks and make it to the NHL. But we've talked about it before. How about Vladislav Gavrikov and Darcy Kemper, 6th-round picks, not only have made it to the NHL, but have been very, very big parts of the LA Kings this past season, and hopefully for at least a few more seasons to go. Hey, thanks for making Locked on LA Kings your first listen today. Your second listen needs to be a show that I will be co-hosting over the next few days, and that is Locked on NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube as well. Looking forward to recapping Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals coming up on Thursday night, and I wouldn't be all that disappointed if the Florida Panthers had a 3-1 lead over the Edmonton Oilers. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked on LA Kings every day, coming up on our next show, Connor Doyle from the Hockey News, who covers the LA Kings, going to stop by and we'll get his take on everything that's been going on with the LA Kings since we last spoke to him. If you want to contact the show, send an email. We've got a fan feedback show coming up on Friday. The email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And if you're watching on YouTube, we always welcome your comments in the comment section as well. We would love for you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.